Welcome to a bonus edition of Behind the Mic. I'm Joe Reed, and Laura Rossi is with me, and she is here to talk about Earphones winners and give us her sense of them. It's what she's listened to, what she is listening to, and what's next on her docket. Laura, welcome. It's always a pleasure.
Hi, Joe. The pleasure is all mine. I'm delighted to be back to talk to you about 3 Earphones titles.
Okay, start us off.
Okay, so the title that I recently listened to is Syme's Letter Writer, a guide to modern correspondence about almost every imaginable subject of daily life, with odes to desktop, ephemera, and selected letters of famous writers by Rachel Syme, read by Rachel Syme and Rebecca Bacht.
Okay, I'm loving this so far. Tell me about it. Tell me more.
I have so much to tell Joe that we could take the whole episode. But I want to set the scene. And the last time we spoke, we happened to talk about a beverage. We spoke about martinis.
Yes, we did.
For this title, and I think for the rest of the episode, I'm going to say a nice cup of tea. I'm having chamomile right now with honey. I'm totally inspired by Rachel, who is a writer. She covers cultural subjects for The New Yorker. This is an Earphones Award title. And as you know from the subtitle, it's all about the art of letter writing, which is just so delightful. And the reason I picked the title is it felt so refreshing in this world of social media and texting to go back to something real that you could hold in your hand.
Does she talk about paper and pens?
She does talk about paper and
I
pens.
love
And
paper and pens.
in fact, Joe, what's really fun is the audiobook comes with a downloadable PDF where there are all sorts of illustrations and tchotchkes and just cute kind of letter writing tidbits that she talks about in the book. And speaking of the talking, so Rachel, this is her first book. She is the narrator. She brings wonderful energy, lots of charm, and it really feels like you're chatting with a friend, hearing her talk about writing. I grew up writing thank you notes. I still treasure
Oh, yeah.
getting the mail, unless it's a
I
bill.
do as well.
And so she gets into a little bit of introduction about the history of letter writing. She has different chapters that go over, how to write a letter with poetry, how to write a gossipy letter. And all of this started from an urge to have a pen pal.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
When she was young, she wanted a pen pal, or is this as a grown-up person?
This is as a grown-up person, and I'm going to set the scene. This goes back to the pandemic. And in the book, she tells us that she decided she wanted to create something to help her during the pandemic lockdown. She wanted to begin writing letters to strangers and have a pen pal. So, after we hear some history where Rachel takes us through some of the most famous letter writing pairs in history, the Fitzgeralds, Sylvia Plath, Julia Child, Rachel tells us about the incentive for her own letter writing. Basically, she decided during the pandemic lockdown that she wanted to create a project called Pen Pal Palooza. And this was I want to write letters to strangers. So she put out an ask. She received a direct message on social media from a lovely woman. Her name is Amy. And we're going to hear the sound clip where she tells us about Amy and how their pen pal friendship began.
Okay, here we go. This is Syme's Letter Writer. It's by Rachel Syme, and we're going to be hearing from Rachel Syme right now.
Amy and I have been writing to each other, more or less weekly, for almost 4 years. And it will be much longer by the time this book emerges. We found each other in an unceremonious way. Amy sent me a direct message on social media, shortly before I launched the Penpalooza project, and had casually posed the idea of writing letters to strangers to pass the time in early lockdown. "I'm up for it," she wrote. And even though we didn't know each other, I sent her my address in hopes that she might be serious. She was. What I got from her was unlike any letter I had ever received. Long, conspiratorial, full of handwritten recipes and sense memories and poetic asides. It was like we had already been writing for decades.
My god, that is so amazing. I am jealous. I am absolutely jealous.
Me too. This has made me want to resurrect my own letter writing and pen paling days. And in fact, just today, Joe, I dropped off a letter in a neighbor's mailbox, thanking her for a lovely gesture that she did a couple weeks ago unexpectedly. And there really is nothing like the intimacy of receiving a letter.
I love getting letters, and it's also I mean, in writing them, paper has patience,
Yeah.
and much more than a keypad.
Absolutely, and I don't know about you, Joe. I am a forever lover of great stationery, wonderful pens, fountain pens. I still have a collection from when I did write more letters, and really, I'm kinda done with keyboards 24/7.
And I am with you. Okay, that is Syme's Letter Writer by Rachel Syme, read by Rachel Syme with Rebecca Bacht. So that's the audiobook you recently listened to. What are you listening to now?
So today I listened to a little more of a book, Show Don't Tell Stories by Curtis Sittenfeld. And this has a collection of many narrators. It's read by Michael Crouch, Curtis Sittenfeld, George Newbern, Kristen C., Xe Sands, Emily Rankin, and Nicole Lewis.
Wow, that is an extraordinary collection of narrators.
Yes. And Joe, confession, I selected this title because I love hearing multiple narrators. And this cast, especially Michael Crouch, who is a favorite of mine, and Xe
Mhm.
Fans. And I thought, I'm going to dive in. I don't do a lot of short story audiobooks, but I have a history as a reader of really enjoying Curtis Sittenfeld's novels. And she's known for Prep. And in fact, that one of the characters from her novel Prep is in one of these stories.
Oh,
So
cool.
it's really fun.
It's nice when they're revisited, and you know what I love that I know about this audiobook is that it has credits in the beginning of who is reading what, and I wanna just send a lot of love towards Random House Audio.
Yeah,
Good for you.
good for you. And in fact, talking about pen and paper, I pulled out one of my favorite notebooks. And as I was thinking about our conversation today, I did make a list of the different narrators in the story. So I also want to thank the publisher because the sound clip that I want us to talk about today is really iconic. So it's a story, Show Don't Tell. And the narrator is Emily Rankin. But the history of this piece is the short story Show Don't Tell first ran in the New Yorker May 29th, 2017. And it's a really, sort of, it's essentially fiction about an MFA writing program that Curtis Sittenfeld fictionalized about some of her own experiences, but in kind of a precursor to the podcast days that we're, so fully immersed in now. In June of 2017, Curtis actually read this story herself for a podcast on the New Yorker website called The Writer's Voice. So I listened to Curtis and then
Yeah.
listened to the narrator Emily. And although Curtis did, a wonderful job, the story is elevated in a way that just brought me right there as if I were in the room hearing about kind of the path to getting this. It's called the Peasley, and it's funding for the MFA program. And that's the clip we're going to hear.
Okay. This is Show Don't Tell Stories by Curtis Sittenfeld, and it's read by a multicast. We're going to be hearing from Emily Rankin.
At some point, a rich old man named Ryland W. Peasley had made an enormous donation to the program. And this was why not only the second-year fellowships he'd endowed, but also the people who received them were called Peasleys. You'd say, he's a Peasley, or she's a Peasley. Each year, 4 were granted. There were other kinds of fellowships, but none of them provided as much money, $8,800, as the Peasleys. Plus, with all the others, you still had to teach undergrads. Our professors and the program administrators were cagey about the exact date when we'd received the letters specifying our second-year funding, but a rumor was going around that it would be on a Monday in mid-March, which meant that, instead of sitting at my desk, I spent the majority of a morning and an early afternoon standing at the front window of my apartment, scanning the street for the mailman.
Oh, that's good. That first of all is really, really good writing, but I think Emily just nails it. That apprehension, there's a youthfulness to her voice that I really like.
Yes. And Joe, for me, I did feel like this filled my craving for what I'm going to call a little bit more of literary writing. And so it just really it captured me in a way that made the entire story feel brand new. And as I said, I'm still listening to it and I'm just bopping around listening to different stories. I loved Xe Sands, of course, Michael Crouch. And again, Curtis did a lovely job in her narration. And I have the story that she narrates is called Lost But Not Forgotten.
So that's what you're listening to now. Show Don't Tell, stories by Curtis Sittenfeld, and it's read by a multicast, which is fabulous. And what is queued up for you next?
Joe, I saved a wonderful book for my to listen to next. And one of the reasons I queued this one up is because I have some travel coming up and I wanted to reward myself. So the book is The Story She Left Behind by Patti Callahan Henry, read by Julia Whelan and Theo Solomon.
Okay, so tell me why this is next on your list.
So, this is historical fiction. Of course, it's an Earphones Award winner. This is a buzzy, big book that I keep hearing about this spring. And in fact, it was an instant New York Times bestseller. The story is basically about a woman who disappears. So, it's a lost mother and daughter story. There's a book involved. This book is the first one that Julia Whelan's narrated for Patti Callahan Henry. So, Joe, I'm really excited because, of course, Julia Whelan, one of my favorite narrators, and I know I'm not alone in that. I love Patty's writing, and I think the magic of the two, will make this a listen that I probably am not going to want to pause. I did cheat a tiny bit, and so I listened to the official sound sample, and it just got me right away from the minute I hear Julia open with it is 2 o'clock in the morning. And I think if our listeners hear that, they're going to immediately add this to their own to listen to list.
Here we go. This is The Story She Left Behind by Patti Callahan Henry, and it's read by Julia Whelan and Theo Solomon.
It is 2 o'clock in the morning when she leaves everyone she loves. At the edge of the May River, she unties the ropes of the Chris-craft from the cleats of the weathered dock and steps into the boat. In the velvet quiet, a new moon cowers behind its dark cloak. The stars flare as bright as the fire that is sending her away. She will be long gone before the tide returns in 6 hours to fill the marsh and secret waterways. She knows the tides of this estuary without having to look at a nautical chart or check the battered barometer that is always hung on the screened porch of their shingled house. She has planned this escape to the minute, and she does not hesitate.
Well, that is certainly enticing.
Yeah.
And Julia is not just a smart reader, but a very subtle one that I really can appreciate.
Yes, and I know, again, I haven't listened to this yet, but I've seen some of the action online, and Patti Callahan Henry is one of the founding authors and co-creators of a weekly web show and podcast. The title is Friends in Fiction, and if you Google that, you can see some of the events and things that she's doing, but I know that she has continued to talk about how remarkable it was to work with Julia and Theo.
Okay, that is The Story She Left Behind by Patti Callahan Henry, read by Julia Whelan and Theo Solomon. And that is the audiobook you are going to be listening to next, another Earphones winner.
Yes, Joe. And like I said, this whole selection, this trio of books really goes well with a great cup of tea, especially if you're in New England or on the East Coast where it still feels like winter, even though it's spring.
I agree. Laura, thank you so much, and I will talk to you next month.
Thank you, Joe. I love being a guest.
Dreamscape is the publisher of today's episode of Behind the Mic. Dreamscape publishes audiobooks from authors like Frida McFadden, Kirsten Proby, and Stasia Stark. Explore their full catalog at dreamscapepublishing.com. Behind the Mic is produced by Jessica Lockhart, Robin Witten, Michelle Cobb, Stephen Cummings, Leslie Fine, Alan Minskoff, Alex Ritchie, Laura Rossi, and Kendra Winchester are our contributors. Jennifer Dahl is our editor. The music is William Ross Chernoff's Nomads, 4-Way. And I'm your host, Jo Reed. Good listening.